All right, so buckle up, because today we are going deep.
Deep.
Yeah, deep into Note Lab mode.
Oh, I love Note Lab mode.
Me too. And I especially love it because it was chosen by you, the listener.
That's right, straight from the suggestion box.
Exactly. And today we are diving into a really, really great book.
Ooh, which one?
Poor Charlie's Almanac.
Now that's a classic.
It is a classic, and it's the collected wit and wisdom of the one and only legendary Charlie Munger.
You know what I love about this book? It's not just like a typical business book, the kind that just tells you how to make money.
Right, it's not just like, do this, do that, and then you'll be rich.
Exactly. It's so much more than that.
Yeah, I mean, this book is a collection of Munger's thoughts on just about everything.
Yeah, business, investing,
They-
psychology.
Human nature, even.
It's like you're getting a glimpse into the mind of, well, one of the most successful investors ever.
Yeah, I mean, this is the guy who's been Warren Buffett's right-hand man for how many decades?
Decades, and they've both crushed it.
And they've crushed it, so yeah, there's a lot to unpack here.
And one of the things that you'll find throughout the book is this concept of multidisciplinary thinking.
Multidisciplinary thinking. Okay, so break that down for me.
Well, Munger, he believes that to really understand any problem, you have to look at it from all these different angles,
Yeah.
using insights from, well, from different fields.
Well, it's not enough to just, like, be a finance whiz.
Right. It's not enough to just know the numbers. You got to borrow ideas from psychology, history, science, all of it.
So, like, how does that actually work? I mean, how do you actually do that in practice?
Well, Munger talks about this lattice work of mental models.
The lattice work of mental models. Okay.
Yeah, imagine like a lattice fence with all its interconnected pieces.
Yep.
Each piece represents a different discipline or area of knowledge.
Gotcha.
And the more pieces you have, the stronger and more comprehensive your understanding of things becomes.
So you're, like, connecting the dots between all these different fields.
Yeah, connecting the dots. That's a great way to put it.
But isn't there a danger of just getting, like, overwhelmed by all these different models?
Well, that's why Munger says you got to focus on the most reliable models,
Okay.
the big ideas from hard sciences like physics and engineering,
Okay.
along with principles from psychology and history.
So, like, you're not trying to learn everything about everything.
No, not at all.
You're focusing on these fundamental principles that have really stood the test of time.
You got it.
I like that.
And remember, it's not enough to just have these models in your head. You have to actually use them.
Right. Like what? How?
Well, he's a big believer in using checklists.
Checklists.
Yeah, just like pilots use before takeoff.
That makes a lot of sense.
So you don't overlook crucial factors when you're making a decision.
So it's all about, like, minimizing those mistakes by really thinking things through.
Right. Thinking systematically, having a process.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and this multidisciplinary approach, it really comes through in Munger's investment philosophy.
Okay, so how does this all tie into his investment philosophy?
Well, Munger, along with Warren Buffett, they're known for this thing called sit on your ass investing.
Sit on your ass investing. That's a great name.
Isn't it? It's very catchy. It emphasizes patience, long-term thinking, and focusing on quality over quantity.
So it's not about, like, chasing those quick profits.
Not at all.
It's not about jumping in and out of the market trying to time it just right.
No, it's about finding wonderful businesses at a fair price
Okay.
and then just holding on to them for the long haul.
But wouldn't that be, like, considered risky by some of the more traditional investors? Like, putting all your eggs in just a few baskets?
Well, remember, they're not just picking companies randomly.
Right.
They do their homework,
Of course.
analyzing businesses from all these different angles.
Using that lattice work.
Exactly. Using their lattice work of mental models.
That's cool.
They look for what Munger calls mispriced bets.
Mispriced bets. What's that mean?
Companies that the market has undervalued. They're looking for those hidden gems that other investors might have missed.
Because they weren't using the lattice work?
Exactly, because they weren't looking at the situation from all angles.
That's smart.
And this also ties into their skepticism of the efficient market hypothesis.
Okay, the efficient market hypothesis. Remind me what that is.
This idea that the market is always right,
Right.
that prices always reflect all available information.
Okay.
Munger and Buffett, they don't buy that.
So they think the market can be wrong sometimes.
They think sometimes the market gets it wrong.
And that's when the opportunities arise.
That's when those opportunities for long-term investors appear.
It's all about being patient.
Patience, absolutely.
Waiting for those opportunities and then having the confidence to act when you find them.
That's a powerful approach.
It is a powerful approach.
And it's all rooted in a deep understanding of not just finance,
but also,
but psychology, history, human nature.
yeah, That's what makes Charlie Munger such a fascinating figure.
He's always thinking about the bigger picture.
And speaking of the bigger picture, you know, Poor Charlie's Almanac isn't just about, like, dry business theories.
Oh, no, not at all.
There are some really engaging personal stories woven throughout.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's those stories that really bring, like, his philosophy to life.
They make it relatable.
Yeah. And they're just great stories.
And their stories aren't just entertaining, though. They offer valuable lessons about life.
Oh, yeah.
About making good decisions.
And just navigating a world that can be so complex.
They really do. And one story that really stands out to me is one about Munger's father, and his two very different clients.
Oh, yeah. Grant McFadden and Mr. X.
Yes.
That's a classic Munger story.
It is, and it highlights, the importance of understanding incentive.
Incentives.
Yeah, and choosing your battles wisely.
It's so interesting because, on the surface, it seems kind of counterintuitive.
Oh, totally.
That, a lawyer would prefer to work with this difficult, demanding client.
Right, but as Munger's father explained, sometimes those difficult clients are the ones who end up generating the most business.
They're always creating problems for themselves.
Exactly.
Which require legal solutions.
And billable hours.
Right, exactly. So, whereas a virtuous client like Grant McFadden...
Right, a stand-up guy.
Yeah, might be, like, a pleasure to work with.
Yeah.
He's less likely to need all those frequent legal services.
He's proactive,
Yeah.
He takes care of things.
Mr. X, on the other hand...
Oh, he's a walking liability.
A constant source of legal headaches.
Headaches and billable hours.
It's so funny. It's like that saying, never wrestle with a pig.
Oh, I love that one.
You both get dirty, but the pig likes it.
So true.
Sometimes, it's better to just walk away from those unnecessary conflicts.
Choose your battles.
Yeah, choose your battles. And this ties back into, Munger's emphasis on understanding human nature.
Absolutely.
And how incentives drive behavior.
It's all about motivations, right? What are the underlying motivations that are shaping people's actions?
In business, investing, even everyday life.
It's a powerful lens to view the world through.
It is. And I think that understanding of human psychology is a big part of what makes Charlie Munger such a sharp investor.
Without.
One of the most insightful sections of the book is when he talks about what he calls the psychology of human misjudgment.
Oh, yes.
And he's just fascinated by how even the most brilliant people can fall prey to these cognitive biases.
Those mental blind spots.
Yeah, that prevent us from seeing things clearly.
We all have them.
We do. So what are some of the specific biases that he highlights?
Well, one of the most pervasive is what he calls incentive-caused bias.
Okay, incentive-caused bias.
The idea that our judgments are easily swayed by incentives, often subconsciously. We tend to see what we want to see, especially if it benefits us financially.
Or if it aligns with our existing beliefs, even...
Exactly. And Munger argues that this bias is especially dangerous in fields like, finance and investing.
Where there's so much money at stake.
So much money.
And those incentives can be so powerful.
He stresses the importance of having, well-designed incentive systems.
So that people are encouraged to make the right decisions.
Right. Systems that align with ethical behavior and don't encourage those bad decisions.
So it's a reminder that even well-intentioned people can be corrupted by the wrong incentives.
Absolutely. And I think this applies to so many areas of life, not just business.
Oh, totally. Like, think about politics.
Oh, yeah.
Or even personal relationships.
It's about being aware of how our own motivations and the motivations of others might be influencing our perceptions.
It's hard to see those things clearly sometimes.
It is. It takes effort.
So what are some other biases that, that we should be on the lookout for?
Well, another big one is the inconsistency avoidance tendency.
Okay, inconsistency avoidance tendency. What's that?
The idea that people resist changing their minds, even when they're presented with really strong evidence.
Even when they're wrong.
They just cling to their existing beliefs.
It's like that saying, it's easier to fool someone than to convince them they've been fooled.
Oh, that's a good one.
Once we've formed an opinion, it's hard to let go of it.
It really is. And Munger argues that this tendency is especially strong when it comes to beliefs that are tied to our identity.
Our sense of self-worth.
Exactly. If we've, built our whole worldview around a particular idea.
It can be really threatening to admit we were wrong.
It feels like an attack.
Yeah, and this can lead to all sorts of problems.
Bad investments, toxic relationships, all of it.
So how do we overcome that?
Well, Munger suggests actively seeking out disconfirming evidence.
So trying to prove yourself wrong.
Yeah, basically it's not easy.
No.
But it's crucial for making better decisions in the long run.
So being willing to challenge your own assumptions.
even when it's uncomfortable.
It takes real intellectual honesty.
It does. It's a skill you have to develop.
What other biases does Munger warn us about?
He also talks about the deprival superreaction tendency.
Deprival superreaction tendency.
Okay, the idea that people react really strongly to perceived losses.
To the threat of losing something.
Yes, and we feel the pain of a loss much more strongly than the pleasure of an equivalent gain.
So we're more motivated to avoid losses than to achieve gains.
Exactly.
Which I guess makes sense from an evolutionary perspective, right?
If our ancestors were focused on, acquiring shiny new objects instead of avoiding danger.
They probably wouldn't have survived very long.
Not at all.
But in the modern world, this bias can really lead to irrational behavior.
It can. We might take on more risk to avoid a sure loss.
Even if the potential downside is even greater.
Or we might hold on to a losing investment for way too long.
Just because we can't stand the thought of selling at a loss.
It's that fear of missing out,
It's hard to resist that feeling of urgency.
It is, even when you know it's not in your best interest.
So how do we overcome that one?
Munger says we need to make decisions based on a rational assessment of the risks and rewards.
Not just our emotional reactions.
Exactly. Take a step back,
Look at the bigger picture.
Ask yourself, what's the most logical course of action here?
Detach yourself from the emotional roller coaster.
Try to think more objectively.
Easier said than done.
It is, but it's what we should strive for.
Okay, so another bias.
Another one. Okay, well, there's the social proof tendency.
Social proof tendency. What's that about?
The idea that we're really influenced by what other people do or believe.
Especially in uncertain situations.
Exactly. We look to the crowd for guidance.
Even if the crowd is wrong.
Even if they're totally wrong.
Like that classic experiment where, people are asked to judge the length of a line and they all give the wrong answer just because they're conforming to the group.
Exactly like that.
And this tendency is especially strong when we're feeling, uncertain or insecure.
We assume that if everyone else is doing something, it must be the right thing to do.
Even if it doesn't make any sense to us.
It's the herd mentality.
That can lead to, market bubbles.
Market bubbles, fashion trends, all sorts of things.
So how do we resist that urge to follow the crowd?
Munger says we need to develop independent thinking skills.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Read widely,
Cultivate a diverse range of interests.
Expose yourself to different perspectives.
Build that latticework of mental models.
So we can see the world from multiple angles.
And make our own informed decisions.
That's the goal.
Okay, so is there one more bias that he talks about?
Well, there's one more that's really important, the Lollapalooza effect.
The Lollapalooza effect, that sounds intense.
It is. It's when multiple psychological tendencies combine to push us in the same direction.
Oh, wow.
Leading to, sometimes extreme consequences.
So it's like a perfect storm of bias.
It can be.
Give me an example.
Okay, imagine a situation where, you have a financial incentive to make a certain decision.
Okay.
You're surrounded by people who are all doing the same thing. You're afraid of missing out, and you're also really reluctant to change your mind.
That's a recipe for disaster.
It can be. So Munger warns us to be especially careful in situations where multiple biases are at play.
So it's like all your warning lights are flashing at once.
You need to slow down, analyze the situation carefully, and don't let your emotions take over.
So we've talked about a lot of different biases.
We have.
And honestly, it's a little overwhelming.
It can be.
How do we even begin to apply all of this to our own lives?
Right.
It's not like we can just flip a switch and suddenly become perfectly rational.
You're right. It's a lifelong process.
Of learning and self-awareness.
But I think one of the most important takeaways from Munger's work is that we need to be humble.
Humble.
About our own cognitive limitations.
So being aware of our own blind spots.
Yeah, trying to compensate for them.
And being willing to change our minds when presented with new information.
Even if it means admitting we were wrong.
It's about being open to different perspectives and not getting too attached to our own beliefs.
Exactly. And Munger argues that this kind of intellectual humility is essential for making good decisions.
In all areas of life.
Investing, relationships, politics, everything.
Okay, so we've covered Munger's multidisciplinary thinking, his approach to investing, and his insights into human psychology.
We've covered a lot of ground.
But Poor Charlie's Almanac is also just full of these memorable quotes and anecdotes that really capture his wit and wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like every page has some little nugget
Oh, totally.
That just makes you stop and think, like,
Yeah.
whoa, I never thought of it that way before.
Munger just has this way, right, of like cutting through all the complexity and distilling things down to their essence.
Like, so
But
simple.
he does it with like this wit and humor.
Oh, the humor, yeah.
That makes even the most like challenging ideas really engaging.
Yeah, there was one quote that really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
It is not enough to be industrious. So are the ants.
Oh, I love that one.
What are you industrious about?
It's such a good question.
It is. It's such a good question.
It's like, it's not enough to just be busy.
Right.
You got to be busy doing the right things.
The things that actually matter.
The things that align with, like, your values and your goals.
Not just busy work.
Exactly. It's about being intentional with your time and energy.
Right.
Not just going through the motions, but really thinking about what you want to accomplish.
And why?
Yeah, what's the purpose?
And there's another quote, I think I wrote it down.
Okay.
Spend each day trying to be a little wiser than you were when you woke up. Discharge your duties faithfully and well. Step by step you get ahead, but not necessarily in fast spurts. But you build discipline by preparing for fast spurts.
Wow, there's a lot in that one.
I know, right?
It speaks to, like, the power of consistency.
Discipline, yeah.
It's those small incremental improvements.
Day after day.
Building towards that long-term success.
And it's not about those overnight transformations,
No, it's a slow and steady process.
Accumulating knowledge.
Gaining experience.
It's such an encouraging message, I think.
It is.
Especially in a world that, it just glorifies instant gratification.
Overnight success. Yeah.
It's like, no, real progress takes
time.
effort.
And Charlie Munger is a perfect example of that.
Oh,
I mean, he didn't become a billionaire by accident.
Right. It was decades of hard work.
Honing his skills, building his network.
Refining his approach.
It's inspiring, really.
And speaking of his approach to investing,
yeah,
I think one of the most valuable things I've learned from this book is just the importance of having that long-term perspective.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so easy to get caught up in, like, the day-to-day fluctuations of the market.
Oh, I know. It's like a roller coaster.
But Munger's like, no, no, no.
Zoom out.
Real wealth is built over time.
Patience, discipline.
Focusing on quality.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
I love that.
And remember, there are going to be ups and downs along the way.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But if you stick to your principles,
focus on the fundamentals,
you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You're more likely to come out ahead in the end.
I really appreciate Munger's emphasis on, ethical behavior.
Integrity.
Like, he sees those qualities as essential for success,
Not just in business, but in life.
Like, he doesn't shy away from calling out unethical behavior.
Even when it's, profitable.
Or widely accepted, even.
He believes that doing the right thing,
it's not just morally sound.
It's good for business.
In the long run.
And he and Warren Buffett, they have this reputation.
Yeah, for honesty.
Transparency.
And it's earned them, I think, the trust of so many people.
Investors, the public.
It's a good reminder that character matters.
It does.
And that building a strong reputation, it takes time.
It takes effort.
But it's an investment worth making.
Absolutely.
So to kind of wrap things up, Poor Charlie's Almanac, it's not just a business book.
No, it's so much more.
It's a collection of wisdom and insights.
That can help anyone.
Yeah, make better decisions.
Live a more fulfilling life.
Maybe even achieve a bit of financial success along the way.
It's a book that challenges us to think differently.
To question our assumptions.
To never stop learning.
It reminds us that true wisdom, it's not just about, accumulating all this knowledge.
It's about applying it.
Yeah, applying it to live a better life.
A life of purpose.
A life of meaning.
If you're looking for a book that will make you think, make you laugh,
and maybe even change the way you see the world,
pick up a copy of Poor Charlie's Almanac.
You won't regret it.
And remember, as Charlie Munger said,
oh, yeah?
The best thing a human being can do is to help another human being know more.
That's what we try to do here.
I hope we've done that today.
I think we have.
Until next time.
Keep diving deep. Keep learning.
And keep seeking wisdom.
Wherever you can find it.